Blessed Memory. From The Pleasures of Memory, by Samuel Rogers. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Lianne Yao. Blessed Memory. Ethereal power, who at the noon of night recall'st the far-fled spirit of delight, from whom that musing, melancholy mood which charms the wise and elevates the good. Blessed Memory, hail! O grant the grateful muse her pencil dipped in nature's living hues, to pass the clouds that round thy empire roll, and trace its airy precincts in the soul. Lulled in the countless chambers of the brain, our thoughts are linked by many a hidden chain. Awake but one, and lo, what myriads rise! Each stamps its image as the other flies. Each, as the various avenues of sense delight or sorrow to the soul dispense, brightens or fades, yet all with magic art control the latent fibres of the heart. As studious Prospero's mysterious spell drew every subject spirit to his cell, each at thy call advances or retires, as judgment dictates, or the scene inspires. Each thrills the seat of sense, that sacred source whence the fine nerves direct their mazy course, and through the frame invisibly convey the subtle, quick vibrations as they play. Hail, Memory, hail! In thy exhaustless mine, from age to age unnumbered treasures shine. Thought and her shadowy brood thy call obey, and place and time are subject to thy sway. Thy pleasures most we feel when most alone, the only pleasures we can call our own. Lighter than air, hope's summer visions die, if but a fleeting cloud obscure the sky. If but a beam of sober reason play, lo, fancy's very frostwork melts away. But can the wiles of art, the grasp of power, snatch the rich relics of a well-spent hour? These, when the trembling spirit wings her flight, pour round her path a stream of living light, and gild those pure and perfect realms of rest, where virtue triumphs, and her sons are blessed. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sudden Light by Dante Gabriel Rossetti. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter. Sudden Light. I have been here before, but when or how I cannot tell. I know the grass beyond the door, the sweet keen smell, the sighing sound, the lights around the shore. You have been mine before. How long ago I may not know, but just when at that swallow's soar your neck turned so, some veil did fall, I knew it all of yore. Has this been thus before? And shall not thus time's eddying flight still with our lives our love restore, in death's despite, and day and night yield one delight once more? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Pre-Existence by Paul Hamilton Hayne. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter. Pre-Existence. While sauntering through the crowded street, some half-remembered face I meet. Albeit upon no mortal shore, that face, methinks, has smiled before. Lost in a gay and festal throng, I tremble at some tender song, set to an air whose golden bars I must have heard in other stars. In sacred aisles I pause to share the blessings of a priestly prayer, when the whole scene which greets mine eyes in some strange mode I recognize as one whose every mystic part I feel prefigured in my heart. At sunset as I calmly stand, a stranger on an alien strand, familiar as my childhood's home seems the long stretch of wave and foam. One sails toward me o'er the bay, and what he comes to do and say I can foretell. A prescient lore springs from some life outlived of yore. O swift, instinctive, startling gleams of deep soul knowledge! Not as dreams, for aye ye vaguely dawn and die, but oft with lightning certainty pierce through the dark, oblivious brain, to make old thoughts and memories plain. Thoughts which perchance must travel back across the wild, bewildering track of countless aeons. Memories far, high-reaching as yon pallid star, unknown, scarce seen, whose flickering grace faints on the outmost rings of space. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Once Before by Mary Mapes Dodge. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. Once before. Once before this self-same air passed me, though I know not where. Strange how very like it came, touch and fragrance were the same, sound of mingled voices, too, with a light laugh ringing through. Someone moving here or there, someone passing up the stair, someone calling from without, or a far-off childish shout. Simple, home-like, nothing more, yet it all hath been before. No, not to-day, nor yesterday, nor any day, but far away, so long ago, so very far, it might have been on other star. How was it spent, and where, and when, this life that went, yet comes again? Was sleep its world, or death its shore? I still the silent past implore. Ah, never dream had power to show such vexing glimpse of long ago. Never a death could follow death with love between, and home, and breath. The spell has passed. What spendthrifts we, of simple household certainty! What golden grain we trample low, searching for flowers that never grow! Why, home is real, and love is real, nor false our honest high ideal. Life, it is bounding, warm and strong, and all my heart resounds with song. It must be true, whate'er befall, this and the world to come are all. And yet it puzzles me, alack, when life that could not be comes back. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Lost Chord by Adelaide Ann Proctor. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Leanne Yao. A Lost Chord. Seated one day at the organ, I was weary and ill at ease, and my fingers wandered idly over the noisy keys. I do not know what I was playing, or what I was dreaming then, but I struck one chord of music like the sound of a great amen. It flooded the crimson twilight like the close of an angel's psalm, and it lay on my fevered spirit with a touch of infinite calm. It quieted pain and sorrow like love overcoming strife. It seemed the harmonious echo from our discordant life. It linked all perplexed meanings into one perfect peace, and trembled away into silence as if it were loath to cease. I have sought, but I seek it vainly, that one lost chord divine, that came from the soul of the organ and entered into mine. It may be that death's bright angel will speak in that chord again. It may be that only in heaven I shall hear that grand Amen. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Closing Year by George Denison Prentice. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. The Closing Year. 'Tis midnight's holy hour, and silence now is brooding like a gentle spirit o'er the still and pulseless world. Hark on the winds, the bells' deep tones are swelling. 'Tis the knell of the departed year. No funeral train is sweeping past, yet on the stream and wood, with melancholy light, the moonbeams rest like a pale, spotless shroud. The air is stirred as by a mourner's sigh, and on yon cloud that floats so still and placidly through heaven, the spirits of the seasons seem to stand. Young spring, bright summer, autumn's solemn form, and winter, with its aged locks and breath in mournful cadences that come abroad, like the far wind harp's wild and touching wail, a melancholy dirge o'er the dead year, gone from the earth forever. 'Tis a time for memory and for tears, within the deep still chambers of the heart, a spectre dim, whose tones are like the wizard's voice of time, heard from the tomb of ages, points its cold and solemn finger to the beautiful and holy visions that have passed away, and left no shadow of their loveliness on the dead waste of life. That spectre lifts the coffin lid of hope and joy and love, and bending mournfully above the pale, sweet forms that slumber there, scatters dead flowers o'er what has passed to nothingness. The year has gone, and with it many a glorious throng of happy dreams. Its mark is on each brow, its shadow in each heart. In its swift course it waved its sceptre o'er the beautiful, and they are not. Upon the strong man and the haughty form is fallen, and the flashing eye is dim. It trod the hall of revelry, where thronged the bright and joyous, and the tearful wail of stricken ones is heard, where erst the song and reckless shout resounded. It passed o'er the battle plain, where sword and spear and shield flashed in the light of midday, and the strength of serried hosts is shivered, and the grass, green from the soil of carnage, waves above the crushed and mouldering skeleton. It came and faded like a wreath of mist at eve, yet ere it melted in the viewless air, it heralded its millions to their home in the dim land of dreams. Remorseless time, fierce spirit of the glass and scythe, what power can stay him in his silent course, or melt his iron heart to pity? On, still on, he presses, and forever. The proud bird, the condor of the Andes, that can soar through heaven's unfathomable depths, or brave the fury of the northern hurricane, and bathe his plumage in the thunder's home, furls his broad wings at nightfall, and sinks down to rest upon his mountain crag. But time knows not the weight of sleep or weariness, and night's deep darkness has no chain to bind his rushing pinions. Revolutions sweep o'er the earth like troubled visions o'er the breast of dreaming sorrow. Cities rise and sink like bubbles on the water. Fiery isles spring blazing from the ocean, and go back to their mysterious caverns. Mountains rear to heaven their bald and blackened cliffs, and bow their tall heads to the plain. New empires rise, gathering the strengths of hoary centuries, and rush down like the Alpine avalanche, startling the nations and the very stars. Yon bright and burning blazonry of God glitter awhile in their eternal depths, and, like the Pleiades, loveliest of their train, shoot from their glorious spheres, and pass away to darkle in the trackless void. Yet time the tomb builder, holds his fierce career dark, stern, all pitiless, and pauses not amid the mighty wrecks that strew his path, to sit and muse like other conquerors upon the fearful ruin he has wrought. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Roma by Giosuè Carducci, translated from Italian by Frank Sewell, from The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2, read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Canada. Roma, from Poésie. Give to the wind thy locks, all glittering thy sea-blue eyes, and thy white bosom bared. Mount to thy chariot, while in speechless roaring terror and force before thee clear the way. The shadow of thy helmet, like the flashing of brazen star, strikes through the trembling air. The dust of broken empires, cloud-like rising, follows the awful rumbling of thy wheels. So once, O Rome, beheld the conquered nations thy image, object of their ancient dread. Today a mitre they would place upon thy head, and fold a rosary between thy hands. O name, again to terrors old awake the tired ages and the world. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
There is such power. From Sonnets in Shadow, by Arlo Bates. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Lian Yao. There is such power. There is such power, even in smallest things, to bring the dear past back. A flower's tint, a snatch of some old song, the fleeting glint of sunbeams on the wave. Each vivid brings the lost days up, as from the idle strings of wind harp sad a breeze evokes the hint of antique tunes. A glove which keeps imprint of a loved hand, the heart with torture wrings. By memory of a clasp meant more than speech, a face seen in the crowd with curve of cheek, or sweep of eyelash, our woe's core can reach. How strong is love to yearn, and yet how weak to strive with fate, the lesson all things teach, as of the past in myriad ways they speak. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Verses, supposed to be written by Alexander Selkirk during his solitary abode in the island of Juan Fernandez, by William Cooper. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2, read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter. Verses, supposed to be written by Alexander Selkirk during his solitary abode in the island of Juan Fernandez. I am monarch of all I survey. My right there is none to dispute. From the centre all round to the sea, I am lord of the fowl and the brute. O solitude, where are the charms that sages have seen in thy face? Better dwell in the midst of alarms than reign in this horrible place. I am out of humanity's reach. I must finish my journey alone, never hear the sweet music of speech. I start at the sound of my own. The beasts that roam over the plain my form with indifference see. They are so unacquainted with man, their tameness is shocking to me. Society, friendship, and love, divinely bestowed upon man. Oh, had I the wings of a dove, how soon would I taste you again! My sorrows I then might assuage in the ways of religion and truth, might learn from the wisdom of age, and be cheered by the sallies of youth. Religion! What treasure untold resides in that heavenly word, more precious than silver and gold, or all that this earth can afford. But the sound of the church-going bell these valleys and rocks never heard, never sighed at the sound of a knell, or smiled when a Sabbath appeared. Ye winds that have made me your sport, convey to this desolate shore some cordial, endearing report of a land I shall visit no more. My friends, do they now and then send a wish or a thought after me? Oh, tell me I yet have a friend, though a friend I am never to see. How fleet is a glance of the mind, compared with the speed of its flight! The tempest itself lags behind, and the swift-winged arrows of light. When I think of my own native land, in a moment I seem to be there. But alas, recollection at hand soon hurries me back to despair. But the sea-fowl is gone to her nest, the beast is laid down in his lair. Even here is a season of rest, and I to my cabin repair. There's mercy in every place, and mercy, encouraging thought, gives even affliction a grace, and reconciles man to his lot. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Mignon's Song by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, translated from German by Thomas Carlyle. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. Mignon's Song from Wilhelm Meister. Knowest thou the land where citron apples bloom, and oranges like gold in leafy gloom? A gentle wind from deep blue heaven blows, the myrtle thick, and high the laurel grows. Knowest thou it then? 'Tis there, 'tis there, O my true loved one, thou with me must go. Knowest thou the house, its porch with pillars tall? The rooms do glitter, glitters bright the hall, and marble statues stand and look each one. What's this, poor child, to thee they've done? Knowest thou it then? 'Tis there, 'tis there, O my protector, thou with me must go. Knowest thou the hill, the bridge that hangs on cloud? The mules in mist grope over the torrent loud. In caves lie coiled the dragon's ancient brood. The crag leaps down, and over it the flood. Knowest thou it then? 'Tis there, 'tis there, our way runs. O my father, wilt thou go? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Oft in the Stilly Night by Thomas Moore. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. Oft in the stilly night. Oft in the stilly night, ere slumber's chain has bound me, fond memory brings the light of other days around me. The smiles, the tears of boyhood's years, the words of love then spoken, the eyes that shone, now dimmed and gone, the cheerful hearts now broken. Thus in the stilly night, ere slumber's chain has bound me, sad memory brings the light of other days around me. When I remember all the friends so linked together I've seen around me fall, like leaves in wintry weather, I feel like one who treads alone some banquet hall deserted, whose lights are fled, whose garlands dead, and all but he departed. Thus, in the stilly night, ere slumber's chain has bound me, sad memory brings the light of other days around me. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
On the Ruins of a Country Inn by Philip Frenno. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. On the Ruins of a Country Inn. Where now these mingled ruins lie, a temple once to Bacchus rose, beneath whose roof aspiring high, full many a guest forgot his woes. No more this dome by tempests torn affords a social safe retreat, but ravens here with eyes forlorn and clustering bats henceforth will meet. The priestess of this ruined shrine, unable to survive the stroke, presents no more the ruddy wine. Her glass is gone, her china broke. The friendly host, whose social hand accosted strangers at the door, has left at length his wonted stand, and greets the weary guest no more. Old creeping time that brings decay might yet have spared these mouldering walls, alike beneath whose potent sway a temple or a tavern falls. Is this the place where mirth and joy, coy nymphs and sprightly lads were found? Indeed, no more the nymphs are coy, no more the flowing bowls go round. Is this the place where festive song deceived the wintry hours away? No more the swains the tune prolong, no more the maidens join the lay. Is this the place where Nancy slept, in downy beds of blue and green? Dame Nature here no vigils kept, no cold unfeeling guards were seen. 'Tis gone, and Nancy tempts no more, deep unrelenting silence reigns of all that pleased, that charmed before, the tottering chimney scarce remains. Ye tyrant winds, whose ruffian blast through doors and windows blew too strong, and all the roof to ruin cast, the roof that sheltered us so long. Your wrath appeased, I pray be kind, if Mopsus should the dome renew, that we again may quaff his wine, again collect our jovial crew. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
"'Tis but a little faded flower" by Ellen Clementine Howarth. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Leanne Yao. 'Tis but a little faded flower. 'Tis but a little faded flower, but oh, how fondly dear! 'Twill bring me back one golden hour through many a weary year. I may not to the world impart the secret of its power, but treasured in my inmost heart I keep my faded flower. Where is the heart that doth not keep within its inmost core some fond remembrance hidden deep of days that are no more? Who hath not saved some trifling thing more prized than jewels rare? A faded flower, a broken ring, a tress of golden hair. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Briarwood Pipe by Charles Dawson Shanley. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter as the narrator,
and Leanne Yao as the Briarwood.
The Briarwood Pipe. Ha! Bully for me again, when my turn for picket is over, and now for a smoke as I lie, with the moonlight out in the clover. My pipe, it's only a knot from the root of a briarwood tree, but it turns my heart to the northward. Harry gave it to me. and I'm but a rough at best, bred up to the row and the riot. But a softness comes over my heart when all are asleep and quiet. For, many a time, in the night, strange things appear to my eye, as the breath from my briarwood pipe curls up between me and the sky. Last night, a beautiful spirit arose with the wisping smoke. Oh, I shook, but my heart felt good, as it spread out its hands and spoke, saying,
I am the soul of the briar. We grew at the root of a tree, where lovers would come in the twilight, two ever, for company. Where lovers would come in the morning, ever but two together, when the flowers were full in their blow, the birds in their song and feather. Where lovers would come in the noontide, loitering, never but two, looking in each other's eyes, like pigeons that kiss and coo. And oh, the honeyed words that came when the lips were parted, and the passion that glowed in the eyes, and the lightning looks that darted. Enough, love dwells in the pipe, so ever it glows with fire. I am the soul of the bush, and the spirits call me Sweet Briar.
That's what the briarwood said, as nigh as my tongue can tell, and the words went straight to my heart, like the stroke of the fire bell. To-night I lie in the clover, watching the blossomy smoke. I'm glad the boys are asleep, for I ain't in the humour to joke. I lie in the hefty clover. Up between me and the moon, the smoke of my pipe arises. My heart will be quiet soon. My thoughts are back in the city. I'm everything I've been. I hear the bell from the tower. I run with the swift machine. I see the red shirts crowding around the engine-house door. The foreman's hail through the trumpet comes with a hollow roar. The reel in the Bowery dance-house, the row in the beer saloon, where I put in my licks at Big Paul, come between me and the moon. I hear the drum and the bugle, the tramp of the cowskin boots. We are marching on our muscle, the fires who wave recruits. White handkerchiefs wave before me. Oh, but the sight is pretty on the white marble steps as we march through the heart of the city. Bright eyes and clasping arms, and lips that bade us good hap, and the splendid lady who gave me the havelock for my cap. Oh, up from my pipe cloud rises, there between me and the moon, a beautiful white-robed lady. My heart will be quiet soon. The lovely golden-haired lady ever in dreams I see, who gave me the snow-white havelock. But what does she care for me? Look at my grimy features. Mountains between us stand, I with my sledge-hammer knuckles, she with her jewelled hand. What care I? The day that's dawning may see me, when all is over, with the red stream of my life-blood staining the hefty clover. Hark! The reveille sounding out on the morning air. Devils are we for the battle. Will there be angels there? Kiss me again, sweet briar. The touch of your lip to mine brings back the white-robed lady with hair like the golden wine. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Memory and Oblivion by Macedonius. Translated from Greek by Robert Bland. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Lian Yao. Memory and Oblivion. All hail, remembrance and forgetfulness. Trace memory, trace whate'er is sweet or kind. When friends forsake us or misfortunes press, Oblivion, raise the record from our mind. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Inner Vision by William Wordsworth. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Canada. The Inner Vision. Most sweet it is with unuplifted eyes to pace the ground, if path there be or none, while a fair region round the traveller lies, which he forbears again to look upon. Pleased rather with some soft ideal scene, the work of fancy, or some happy tone of meditation, slipping in between the beauty coming and the beauty gone. If thought and love desert us, from that day let us break off all commerce with the Muse. With thought and love companions of our way, whate'er the senses take or may refuse, the mind's internal heaven shall shed her dews of inspiration on the humblest lay. William Wordsworth. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Thought by Christopher Pearse Cranch. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. Thought. Thought is deeper than all speech, feeling deeper than all thought. Souls to souls can never teach what unto themselves was taught. We are spirits clad in veils, man by man was never seen. All our deep communing fails to remove the shadowy screen. Heart to heart was never known, mind with mind did never meet. We are columns left alone of a temple once complete. Like the stars that gem the sky, far apart though seeming near, in our light we scattered lie, all is thus but starlight here. What is social company but a babbling summer stream? What our wise philosophy but the glancing of a dream? Only when the sun of love melts the scattered stars of thought, only when we live above what the dim-eyed world hath taught, only when our souls are fed by the fount which gave them birth, and by inspiration led, which they never drew from earth, we, like parted drops of rain, swelling till they meet and run, shall be all absorbed again, melting, flowing into one. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Dream Life, from Such Stuff as Dreams Are Made Of, by Pedro Calderón, translated from the Spanish by Edward Fitzgerald. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2, read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter. Dream Life, from Such Stuff as Dreams Are Made Of. And yet, in these our ghostly lives, half night, half day, half sleeping, half awake, how if our waking life, like that of sleep, be all a dream in that eternal life, to which we wake not till we sleep in death? How if, I say, the senses we now trust, for date of sensible comparison, ay, even the reason's self that dates with them, should be an essence of intensity hereafter so transcended, and awoke to a perceptive subtlety so keen, as to confess themselves befooled before, in all that now they will avouch for most. One man, like this, but only so much longer, as life is longer than a summer's day, believed himself a king upon his throne, and played at hazard with his fellows' lives, who cheaply dreamed away their lives to him. The sailor dreamed of tossing on the flood, the soldier of his laurels grown in blood, the lover of the beauty that he knew must yet dissolve to dusty residue. The merchant and the miser of his bags of fingered gold, the beggar of his rags, and all this stage of earth on which we seem such busy actors, and the parts we played substantial as the shadow of a shade, and dreaming but a dream within a dream. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
My Minde to me a kingdom is, by Sir Edward Dyer, from the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. My Minde to me a kingdom is. My mind to me a kingdom is, such perfect joy therein I find, as farre exceeds all earthly bliss that God or nature hath assigned. Though much I want that most would have, yet still my mind forbids to crave. Content I live, this is my stay, I seek no more than may suffice, I press to bear no haughtier sway, look, what I lack my mind supplies. Lo, thus I triumph like a king, content with that my mind doth bring. I see how plenteous surfeits oft, and hastier climbers soon do fall, I see that such as sit aloft mishap doth threaten most of all. These get with toil, they keep with fear, such cares my mind could never bear. No princely pomp, nor wealthy store, no force to win the victory, no wily wit to salve a sore, no shape to win a lover's eye. To none of these I yield as thrall, for why? My mind despiseth all. Some have too much, yet still they crave, I little have, yet seek no more. They are but poor, though much they have, and I am rich with little store. They poor, I rich, they beg, I give, they lacke, I lend, they pine, I live. I laugh not at another's losse, I grudge not at another's gain, no worldly wave my mind can tosse, I brook that is another's bane. I fear no foe, I fawn no friend, I loathe not life, nor dread mine end. I joy not in no earthly blisse, I weigh not Croesus' wealth a straw. For care, I care not what it is, I fear not fortune's fatal law. My mind is such as may not move For beauty bright, or force of love. I wish but what I have at will, I wander not to seek for more. I like the plain, I climb no hill, In greatest stormes I sit on shore, And laugh at them that toil in vain To get what must be lost again. I kiss not where I wish to kill, I feign not love where most I hate, I break no sleep to win my will, I waite not at the mightiest gate. I scorn no poore, I fear no rich, I feel no want, nor have too much. The court ne cart I like ne loathe, Extremes are counted worst of all, The golden mean betwixt them both Doth surest sit, and fears no fall. This is my choice, for why, I find No wealth is like a quiet mind. My wealth is health and perfect ease, My conscience clear, my chief defence. I neither seek by bribes to please, Nor by desert to breed offence. Thus do I live, thus will I die, Would all did so as well as I. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
To one who had scoffed at the poet's poverty. From the Latin of Martial. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. To one who had scoffed at the poet's poverty. Yes, I am poor, Callistratus, I own, and so was ever, yet not quite unknown, graced with a knight's degree. Nor this alone, but through the world my verse is often sung, and, that is he, sounds buzzed from every tongue. And what to few, when dust the fates assign, in bloom and freshness of my days is mine. Thy ceilings on 100 columns rest, wealth as of upstart freedman bursts thy chest. Nile flows in fatness o'er thy ample fields, Cisalpine gore thy silky fleeces yields. Lo, such thou art, and such am I, like me, Callistratus, thou canst not hope to be. 100 of the crowd resemble thee. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Of a Contented Spirit, by Thomas Lord Vaux, from the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Canada. Of a Contented Spirit. When all is done and said, in the end this you shall find: He most of all doth bathe in bliss that hath a quiet mind, and clear from worldly cares, to dream can be content the sweetest time in all this life in thinking to be spent. The body subject is to fickle fortune's power, and to a million of mishaps is casual every hour, and death in time doth change it to a clod of clay, whenas the mind, which is divine, runs never to decay. Companion none is like unto the mind alone, for many have been harmed by speech, through thinking few or none. Fear oftentimes restraineth words, but makes not thought to cease, and he speaks best that hath the skill when for to hold his peace. Our wealth leaves us at death, our kinsmen at the grave, but virtues of the mind unto the heavens with us we have. Wherefore for virtue's sake I can be well content, the sweetest time of all my life to deem in thinking spent. Thomas Lord Vaux. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Thing of Beauty is a Joy Forever. From Endymion, Book 1, by John Keats. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases, it will never pass into nothingness, but still will keep a bower quiet for us, and asleep, full of sweet dreams and health and quiet breathing. Therefore, on every morrow are we wreathing a flowery band to bind us to the earth, spite of despondence, of the inhuman dearth, of noble natures, of the gloomy days, of all the unhealthy and o'er-darkened ways, made for our searching. Yes, in spite of all, some shape of beauty moves away the pall from our dark spirits. Such the sun, the moon, trees old and young sprouting a shady boon for simple sheep, and such are daffodils with the green world they live in, and clear rills that for themselves a coolin' covert make gainst the hot season, the mid-forest brake, rich with a sprinkling of fair musk-rose blooms, and such too is the grandeur of the dooms we have imagined for the mighty dead, all lovely tales that we have heard or read, an endless fountain of immortal drink, pouring unto us from the heavens' brink. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Sower and His Seed by William E. H. Lecky. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Canada. The Sower and His Seed. He planted an oak in his father's park, and a thought in the minds of men, and he bade farewell to his native shore, which he never will see again. O merrily stream the tourist throng to the glow of the southern sky. A vision of pleasure beckons them on, but he went there to die. The oak will grow, and its boughs will spread, and many rejoice in its shade, but none will visit the distant grave where a stranger youth is laid. And the thought will live when the oak has died, and quicken the minds of men, but the name of the thinker has vanished away, and will never be heard again. William E. H. Lecky. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Aesop by Andrew Lang, from The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Leanne Yao as the narrator.
Thomas Peter as Aesop.
And Craig Franklin as the animals.
Aesop. He sat among the woods, he heard the sylvan merriment, he saw the pranks of butterfly and bird, the humours of the ape, the daw. And in the lion or the frog, in all the life of moor and fen, in ass and peacock, stork and dog, he read similitudes of men.
Of these from those,
he cried,
we come, our hearts, our brains descend from these.
And lo, the beasts no more were dumb, but answered out of brakes and trees.
Not ours,
they cried.
Degenerate, if ours at all.
They cried again.
Ye fools who war with God and fate, who strive and toil, strange race of men. For we are neither bond nor free, for we have neither slaves nor kings, but near to nature's heart are we, unconscious of her secret things. Content are we to fall asleep, and well content to wake no more. We do not laugh, we do not weep, nor look behind us and before. But were there cause for moan or mirth, 'tis we, not you, should sigh or scorn, O latest children of the earth, most childish children earth has born.
They spoke, but that misshapen slave told never of the thing he heard, and unto men their portraits gave, in likenesses of beast and bird. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Indirection by Richard Rilf. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. Indirection. Fair are the flowers and the children, but their subtle suggestion is fairer. Rare is the rose burst of dawn, but the secret that clasps it is rarer. Sweet the exultance of song, but the strain that precedes it is sweeter. And never was poem yet writ, but the meaning outmastered the metre. Never a daisy that grows, but a mystery guideth the growing. Never a river that flows, but a majesty sceptres the flowing. Never a Shakespeare that soared, but a stronger than he did enfold him. Nor ever a prophet foretells, but a mightier seer hath foretold him. Back of the canvas that throbs, the painter is hinted and hidden. Into the statue that breathes, the soul of the sculptor is bidden. Under the joy that is felt, lie the infinite issues of feeling. Crowning the glory revealed is the glory that crowns the revealing. Great are the symbols of being, but that which is symboled is greater. Vast the create and beheld, but vaster the inward creator. Back of the sound broods the silence, back of the gift stands the giving, back of the hand that receives thrill the sensitive nerves of receiving. Space is as nothing to spirit, the deed is outdone by the doing. The heart of the wooer is warm, but warmer the heart of the wooing. And up from the pits where these shiver, and up from the heights where those shine, twin voices and shadows swim starward, and the essence of life is divine. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Proem by Madison Cowain. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter. Proem. There is no rhyme that is half so sweet as the song of the wind in the rippling wheat. There is no meter that's half so fine as the lilt of the brook under rock and vine. And the loveliest lyric I ever heard was the wildwood strain of a forest bird. If the wind and the brook and the bird would teach my heart their beautiful parts of speech, and the natural art that they say these with, my soul would sing of beauty and myth, in a rhyme and a meter that none before have sung in their love or dreamed in their lore, and the world would be richer one poet the more. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Poet of Nature, from Festus, by Philip James Bailey. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. The Poet of Nature. He had no times of study and no place. All places and all times to him were one. His soul was like the wind harp which he loved, and sounded only when the spirit blew, sometime in feasts and follies. For he went lifelike through all things, and his thoughts then rose, like sparkles in the bright wine, brighter still. Sometimes in dreams, and then the shining words would wake him in the dark before his face. All things talked thoughts to him. The sea went mad to show his meaning, and the awful sun thundered his thoughts into him. And at night the stars would whisper theirs, the moon sigh hers. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Above the Clouds by Joaquin Miller. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Canada. Above the Clouds. Mid white sierras that slope to the sea lie turbulent lands. Go dwell in the skies, and the thundering tongues of Yosemite shall persuade you to silence, and you shall be wise. I but sing for the love of song and the few who loved me first and shall love me last, and the storm shall pass as the storms have passed, for never were clouds but the sun came through. Joaquin Miller. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Poet's Impulse. From Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto 3, by Lord Byron. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. The Poet's Impulse. Sky, mountains, river, winds, lake, lightnings, ye with night and clouds and thunder and a soul, to make these felt and feeling well may be, things that have made me watchful. The far roll of your departing voices is the knoll of what in me is sleepless, if I rest. But where of ye, O tempests, is the goal? Are ye like those within the human breast, or do ye find at length like eagles some high nest? Could I embody and unbosom now that which is most within me, could I wreak my thoughts upon expression, and thus throw soul, heart, mind, passions, feelings strong or weak, all that I would have sought, and all I seek, bear, know, feel, and yet breathe into one word, and that one word were lightning I would speak, but as it is, I live and die unheard, with a most voiceless thought sheathing it as a sword. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Impression by Edmund Goss. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. Impression. In these restrained and careful times, our knowledge petrifies our rhymes. Ah, for that reckless fire man had, when it was witty to be mad! When wild conceits were piled in scores, and lit by flaring metaphors, when all was crazed and out of tune, yet throbbed with music of the moon. If we could dare to write as ill as some whose voices haunt us still, even we, perchance, might call our own their deep enchanting undertone. We are too diffident and nice, too learned, and too over wise, too much afraid of faults to be the flutes of bold sincerity. For, as this sweet life passes by, we blink and nod with critic eye, we've no words rude enough to give its charm so frank and fugitive. The green and scarlet of the park, the undulating streets at dark, the brown smoke blown across the blue, this colored city we walk through. The pallid faces full of pain, the field smell of the passing wain, the laughter, longing, perfume, strife, the daily spectacle of life. Ah, how shall this be given to rhyme by rhymesters of a knowing time? Ah, for the age when verse was glad, being godlike, to be bad and mad. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Ancient and Modern Muses by Francis Turner Palgrave. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Canada. The Ancient and Modern Muses. The monument outlasting bronze was promised well by bards of old. The lucid outline of their lay its sweet precision keeps for aye, fixed in the ductile language, gold. But we who work with smaller skill, and less refined material mold, this close conglomerate English speech, bequest of many tribes, that each brought here and wrought at from of old. Residuum rough, eked out by rhyme, barbarian ornament uncouth. Our hope is less to last through art than deeper searching of the heart, than broader range of uttered truth. One keen cut group, one deed or aim Athenian Sophocles could show, and rest content. But Shakespeare's stage must hold the glass to every age, 1,000 forms and passions glow upon the world wide canvas. So with larger scope our art we ply, and if the crown be harder won, diviner rays around it run with strains of fuller harmony. Francis Turner Palgrave. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
On his Sonnets of the Wingless Hours by Eugene Lee Hamilton, from the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Lian Ya. On his Sonnets of the Wingless Hours. I wrought them like a targe of hammered gold, on which all Troy is battling round and round, or Circe's cup, embossed with snakes that wound through buds and myrtles, fold on scaly fold. Or like gold coins, which Lydian tombs may hold, stamped with winged races in the old red ground. Or twined gold armlets from the funeral mound of some great Viking, terrible of old. I know not in what metal I have wrought, nor whether what I fashioned will be thrust beneath the clouds that hide forgotten thought. But if it is of gold, it will not rust, and when the time is ripe, it will be brought into the sun, and glitter through its dust. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Poet of Today by Sarah Jane Lippincott. Grace Greenwood. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. The Poet of Today. More than the soul of ancient song is given to thee, O poet of today. Thy dower comes from a higher than Olympian heaven, in holier beauty and in larger power. To thee humanity her woes revealing, would all her griefs and ancient wrongs rehearse, would make thy song the voice of her appealing, and sob her mighty sorrows through thy verse. While in her season of great darkness sharing, hail thou the coming of each promised star, which climbs the midnight of her long despairing, and watch for morning o'er the hills afar. Wherever truth her holy warfare wages, or freedom pines, there let thy voices be heard. Sound like a prophet warning down the ages the human utterances of God's living word. But bring not thou the battle's stormy chorus, the tramp of armies and the roar of fight, not war's hot smoke to taint the sweet morn o'er us, nor blaze of pillage reddened up the night. O let thy lays prolong that angel singing, girdling with music the Redeemer's star, and breathe God's peace to earth, glad tidings bringing from the near heavens of old so dim and far. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Unknown Poets, from the Excursion, Book 1, by William Wordsworth. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. Unknown Poets. Oh, many are the poets that are sown by nature, men endowed with highest gifts, the vision and the faculty divine, yet wanting the accomplishment of verse, which in the docile seasons of their youth it was denied them to acquire through lack of culture and the inspiring aid of books, or haply by a temper too severe, or a nice backwardness afraid of shame. Nor having ere as life advanced been led by circumstance to take unto the height
the measure of themselves, these favoured beings. All but a scattered few live out their time, husbanding that which they possess within, and go to the grave unthought of. Strongest minds are often those of whom the noisy world hears least. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Ballad of Prose and Rhyme by Austin Dobson. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. The Ballad of Prose and Rhyme. When the ways are heavy with mire and rut, in November fogs, in December snows, when the north wind howls and the doors are shut, there is place and enough for the pains of prose. But whenever a scent from the whitethorn blows, and the jasmine stars at the casement climb, and a Rosalind face at the lattice shows, then hey for the ripple of laughing rhyme. When the brain gets dry as an empty nut, when the reason stands on its squarest toes, when the mind, like a beard, has a formal cut, there is place and enough for the pains of prose. But whenever the May blood stirs and glows, and the young year draws to the golden prime, and Sir Romeo sticks in his ear a rose, then hey for the ripple of laughing rhyme. In a theme where the thoughts have a pedant strut, in a changing quarrel of eyes and nose, in a starched procession of if and but, there is place and enough for the pains of prose. But whenever a soft glance softer grows, and the light hour stands to the trysting time, and the secret is told that no one knows, then hey for the ripple of laughing rhyme. Envoy. In the workaday world, for its needs and woes, there is place and enough for the pains of prose. But whenever the May bells clash and chime, then hey for the ripple of laughing rhyme. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
On First Looking into Chapman's Homer by John Keats, from the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2, read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Canada. On First Looking into Chapman's Homer. Much have I travelled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands I have been, which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told, that deep-browed Homer ruled as his demesne, yet did I never breathe its pure serene, till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez, when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. John Keats. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Odyssey. Prefacing the Butcher Lang translation by Andrew Lang. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. The Odyssey. As one that for a weary space has lain, lulled by the song of Circe and her wine, in the gardens near the Pale of Proserpine, where the Aeaean isle forgets the main, and only the low lutes of love complain, and only shadows of wan lovers pine, as such as one were glad to know the brine salt on his lips and the large air again. So gladly from the songs of modern speech men turn and see the stars and feel the free shrill wind beyond the close of heavy flowers, and through the music of the languid hours they hear,
like ocean on a western beach, the surge and thunder of the Odyssey. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sonnet from Astrophel and Stella by Sir Philip Sidney. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Leanne Yao. Sonnet. Loving in truth, and fain in verse my love to show, that she, dear she, might take some pleasure of my pain. Pleasure might cause her read, reading might make her know, knowledge might pity win, and pity grace obtain. I sought fit words to paint the blackest face of woe. Studying inventions fine, her wits to entertain, oft turning others' leaves, to see if thence would flow some fresh and fruitful showers upon my sun-burned brain. But words came halting forth, wanting invention's stay. Invention, nature's child, fled Sepdane study's blows, and others' feet still seemed but strangers in my way. Thus, great with child to speak, and helpless in my throes, biting my truant pen, beating myself for spite. Fool, said my muse to me, look in thy heart, and write. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Singer of One Song by Henry Augustine Beers. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Leanne Yao. The Singer of One Song. He sang one song and died, no more but that. A single song, and carelessly complete. He would not hind and thresh his chance-grown wheat, nor bring his wild fruit to the common vat, to store the acid rinsings, thin and flat, squeezed from the press or trodden under feet. A few slow beads, blood-red and honey-sweet, oozed from the grape, which burst and spilled its fat. But time, who soonest drops the heaviest things that weight his pack, will carry diamonds long. So through the poet's orchestra, which weaves one music from 1,000 stops and strings, pierces the note of that immortal song. High over all, the lonely bugle grieves. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Sonnet by Richard Watson Gilder. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Leanne Yao. The Sonnet. What is a sonnet? 'Tis the pearly shell that murmurs of the far-off murmuring sea, a precious jewel carved most curiously. It is a little picture painted well. What is a sonnet? 'Tis the tear that fell from a great poet's hidden ecstasy. A two-edged sword, a star, a song. Ah me! Sometimes a heavy tolling funeral bell. This was the flame that shook with Dante's breath, the solemn organ whereon Milton played, and the clear glass where Shakespeare's shadow falls. A sea this is, beware who ventureth, for like a fjord the narrow floor is laid, mid-ocean deep to the sheer mountain walls. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
An Autograph by James Russell Lowell. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. An Autograph. O'er the wet sands that insect crept, ages ere man on earth was known, and patient time, while nature slept, the slender tracing turned to stone. 'Twas the first autograph, and ours. Prithee, how much of prose or song in league with the creative powers shall scape oblivion's broom so long? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Art by Sir Gilbert Parker. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Canada. Art. 1. Art's use. What is it but to touch the springs of nature? But to hold a torch up for humanity in life's large corridor, to guide the feet of peasants and of kings? What is it but to carry union through thoughts alien to thoughts kindred, and to merge the lines of color that should not diverge, and give the sun a window to shine through? What is it but to make the world have heed for what its dull eyes else would hardly scan? To draw in a stark light a shameless deed, and to show the fashion of a kingly man? To cherish honor and to smite all shame? To lend hearts voices and give thoughts a name? 2. But wherein shall art work? Shall beauty lead it captive and set kisses on its mouth? Shall it be strained unto the breast of youth, and in a garden live where grows no weed? Shall it, in dalliance with the flaunting world, play but soft airs, sing but sweet tempered songs? Veer lightly from the stress of all great wrongs, and lisp of peace mid battle flags unfurled? Shall it but pluck the sleeve of wantonness, and gently chide the folly of our time? But wave its golden wand at sin's duress, and say, Ah me, to fallow crime? Nay, art serves truth, and truth, with Titan blows, strikes fearless at all evil that it knows. Sir Gilbert Parker. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Broken Music by Thomas Bailey Aldrich. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Lianne Yao. Broken Music. A note, all out of tune in this world's instrument. Amy Levy. I know not in what fashion she was made, nor what her voice was when she used to speak, nor if the silken lashes threw a shade on wan or rosy cheek. I picture her with sorrowful vague eyes, illumined with such strange gleams of inner light, as linger in the drift of London skies ere twilight turns to night. I know not, I conjecture, 'twas a girl that with her own most gentle desperate hand from out God's mystic setting plucked life's pearl. 'Tis hard to understand. So precious life is, even to the old, the hours are as a miser's coins, and she, within her hands lay youth's unminted gold, and all felicity. The winged impetuous spirit, the white flame, that was her soul once, whither has it flown? Above her brow grey lichens blot her name upon the carven stone. This is her book of verses, wren-like notes, shy franknesses, blind gropings, haunting fears. At times across the chords abruptly floats a mist of passionate tears. A fragile lyre too tensely keyed and strung, a broken music, weirdly incomplete. Here a proud mind, self-baffled and self-stung, lies coiled in dark defeat. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Modern Poet, A Song of Derivations, by Alice Meynell. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter. The Modern Poet, A Song of Derivations. I come from nothing, but from where come the undying thoughts I bear? Down, through long links of death and birth, from the past poets of the earth, my immortality is there. I am like the blossom of an hour, but long, long vanished sun and shower awoke my breath i' the young world's air. I track the past back everywhere, through seed and flower, and seed and flower. Or I am like a stream that flows full of the cold springs that arose in morning lands, in distant hills, and down the plain my channel fills with melting of forgotten snows. Voices I have not heard possessed my own fresh songs. My thoughts are blessed with relics of the far unknown, and mixed with memories not my own, the sweet streams throng into my breast. Before this life began to be, the happy songs that waken me woke long ago, and far apart, heavily on this little heart, presses this immortality. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Jesters Plea by Frederick Locker Lampson. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Canada. The Jesters Plea. Published in a volume by several authors for the benefit of the starving weavers of Lancashire during the American Civil War. The world! Was jester ever in a viler than the present? Yet if it ugly be, as sin it almost is as pleasant. It is a merry world, pro tem, and some are gay, and therefore it pleases them, but some condemn the fun they do not care for. It is an ugly world. Offend good people, how they wrangle! The manners that they never mend, the characters they mangle! They eat and drink and scheme and plot and go to church on Sunday, and many are afraid of God, and more of Mrs. Grundy. The time for pen and sword was when my lady fair, for pity, could tend her wounded knight, and then grow tender at his ditty. Some ladies now make pretty songs, and some make pretty nurses. Some men are good for righting wrongs, and some for writing verses. I wish we better understood the tax that poets levy. I know the Muse is very good, I think she's rather heavy. Now she compounds for winning ways by morals of the sternest. Methinks the lays of nowadays are painfully in earnest. When wisdom halts, I humbly try to make the most of folly. If Pallas be unwilling, I prefer to flirt with Polly. To quit the goddess for the maid seems low in lofty musers. But Pallas is a haughty jade, and beggars can't be choosers. I do not wish to see the slaves of party stirring passion, or psalms quite superseding staves, or piety the fashion. I bless the hearts where pity glows, who, here together banded, are holding out a hand to those that wait so empty handed. A righteous work. My masters may a jester by confession scarce noticed join, half sad, half gay, the close of your procession? The motley here seems out of place with graver robes to mingle. But if one tear bedews his face, forgive the bells their jingle. Frederick Locker Lampson. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Verses Why Burnt by Walter Savage Landor. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Lian Yao. Verses Why Burnt. How many verses have I thrown into the fire because the one peculiar word, the wanted most, was irrecoverably lost? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sweet Nature's Voice, from Susan, a Poem of Degrees, by Arthur Joseph Munby, from the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2, read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. Sweet Nature's Voice, from Susan, a Poem of Degrees. Her master gave the signal with a look, then timidly, as if afraid, she took in her rough hands the laureate's dainty book, and straight began. But when she did begin, her own mute sense of poesy within broke forth to hail the poet, and to greet his graceful fancies and the accents sweet in which they are expressed. O lately lost, long loved, long honored, and whose captain's post no living bard is competent to fill, how strange to the deep heart that now is still, and to the vanished hand, and to the ear, whose soft melodious measures are so dear to us who cannot rival them, how strange, if thou, the lord of such a various range, hadst heard this new voice telling ardent's tale. For this was no prim maiden, scant and pale, full of weak sentiment and thin delight in pretty rhymes, who mars the resonant might of noble verse with arts rhetorical and simulated frenzy. Not at all. This was a peasant woman, large and strong, red-handed, ignorant, unused to song, accustomed rather to the rudest prose. And yet there lived within her rustic clothes a heart as true as Arden's, and a brain keener than his, that counts it false and vain to seem aught else than simply what she is. How singular her faculty of bliss! Bliss in her servile work, bliss deep and full in things beyond the vision of the dull, whatever their rank. Things beautiful as these sonorous lines and solemn harmonies, suiting the tale they tell of. Bliss in love, ah, chiefly that, which lifts her soul above its common life, and gives to labour's course such fervour of imaginative force as makes a passion of her basest toil. Surely this servant dress was but a foil to her more lofty being. As she read, her accent was as pure, and all she said as full of interest and of varied grace as were the changeful moods that over her face passed, like swift clouds across a windy sky, at each sad stage of Enoch's history. Such ease, such pathos, such abandonment to what she uttered, moulded as she went her soft sweet voice, and with such self-control did she, interpreting the poet's soul, bridle her own, that when the tale was done, I looked at her amazed. She seemed like one who from some sphere of music had come down, and donned the white cap and the cotton gown, as if to show how much of skill and art may dwell unthought of in the humblest heart. Yet there was no great mystery to tell. She felt it deeply, so she read it well. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Genius by Richard Henry Hengist Horne. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. Genius. Far out at sea the sun was high. While veered the wind and flapped the sail, we saw a snow-white butterfly dancing before the fitful gale, far out at sea. The little wanderer, who had lost his way of danger, nothing knew, settled awhile upon the mast, then fluttered o'er the waters blue, far out at sea.
Above there gleamed the boundless sky, beneath the boundless ocean sheen. Between them danced the butterfly, the spirit life of this vast scene, far out at sea. The tiny soul then soared away, seeking the clouds on fragile wings, lured by the brighter, purer ray, which hope's ecstatic morning brings, far out at sea. Away he sped with shimmering glee, scarce seen, now lost, yet onward borne. Night comes with wind and rain, and he no more will dance before the morn, far out at sea. He dies, and like his mates, I ween, perhaps not sooner, or worse crossed, and he hath felt, thought, known, and seen a larger life and hope, though lost, far out at sea. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
One Day I Wrote Her Name by Edmund Spenser. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter as the narrator.
And Sonia as the woman.
One day I wrote her name. From Amoretti, Sonnet 75. One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves, and washed it away. Again I wrote it with a second hand, but came the tide, and made my pains his prey.
Vain man,
said she,
that dost in vain essay a mortal thing so to immortalize. For I myself shall like to this decay, and eke my name be wiped out likewise.
Not so, quod I, let baser things devise to die in dust, but thou shalt live by fame. My verse your virtues rare shall eternize, and in the heavens write your glorious name, where, when as death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live, and later life renew. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Poet's Death, from the Lay of the Last Minstrel, Canto 5, by Sir Walter Scott, from the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2, read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Canada. The Poet's Death. Call it not vain. They do not err who say that when the poet dies, mute nature mourns her worshipper, and celebrates his obsequies; who say tall cliff and cavern lone for the departed bard make moan, that mountains weep in crystal rill, that flowers in tears of balm distil, through his loved groves that breezes sigh, and oaks in deeper groan reply, and rivers teach their rushing wave to murmur dirges round his grave. Not that, in sooth, o'er mortal urn those things inanimate can mourn, but that the stream, the wood, the gale, is vocal with the plaintive wail of those who, else forgotten long, lived in the poet's faithful song, and, with the poet's parting breath, whose memory feels a second death. The maid's pale shade, who wails her lot, that love, true love, should be forgot, from rose and hawthorn shakes the tear upon the gentle minstrel's bier. The phantom knight, his glory fled, mourns o'er the field he heaped with dead, mounts the wild blast that sweeps amain, and shrieks along the battle plain. The chief, whose antique crownlet long still sparkled in the feudal song, now, from the mountain's misty throne, sees, in the Thanedom once his own, his ashes undistinguished lie, his place, his power, his memory die, his groans the lonely caverns fill, his tears of rage impel the rill. All mourn the minstrel's harp unstrung, their name unknown, their praise unsung. Sir Walter Scott. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Thy Songs and Mine by Julia C. R. Dorr. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter. Thy Songs and Mine. Sing thou my songs for me when I am dead. Soul of my soul, some day thou wilt awake to see the morning on the hilltops break, and the far summits flame with rosy red. But I shall wake not, though above my head armies should thunder, nor for love's sweet sake, though he the tenderest pilgrimage should make, where I am lying in my grassy bed. I shall be silent, with my song half sung. I shall be dumb, with half the story told. I shall be mute, leaving the half unsaid. Take thou the harp ere it be yet unstrung. Wake thou the lyre ere yet its chords be cold. Sing thou my songs and thine when I am dead. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Sharing of the Earth by J. C. Friedrich von Schiller. Translated from the German by Lord Bulwer Lytton. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia as the narrator.
Craig Franklin as the god.
Jason in Canada as the monarch.
And Lian Yao as the poet.
The Sharing of the Earth.
Take the world,
Cried the god from his heaven to man.
I proclaim you its heirs. To divide it amongst you 'tis given. You have only to settle the shares.
Each takes for himself as it pleases. Old and young have alike their desire. The harvest the husbandman seizes. Through the wood and the chase sweeps the squire. The merchant his warehouse is locking. The abbot is choosing his wine. Cries the monarch, the thoroughfare blocking,
Every toll for the passage is mine.
all too late, when the sharing was over, comes the poet. He came from afar. Nothing left can the laggard discover, not an inch but its owners there are.
Woe is me! Is there nothing remaining for the son who best loves thee alone?
Thus to Jove went his voice in complaining, as he fell at the Thunderer's throne.
In the land of thy dreams, if abiding,
Quoth the god,
canst thou murmur at me? Where wert thou when the earth was dividing?
I was,
said the poet,
by thee. Mine eye by thy glory was captured, mine ear by thy music of bliss. Pardon him whom thy world so enraptured, as to lose him his portion in this.
Alas,
said the god,
earth is given, field, forest, and market, and all. What say you to quarters in heaven? Will admit you whenever you call.
End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Immortality of Genius by Sextus Propertius. Translated from Latin by Dr. James Cranston. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. The Immortality of Genius. Orpheus, 'tis said, the Thracian lyre strings sweeping, stayed the swift stream, and soothed the savage brute. Cithæron's rocks, to Thebes spontaneous leaping, rose into walls before Amphion's lute. With dripping steeds did Galatea follow, 'neath Aetna's crags lone Polyphemus' song. Is it strange the loved of Bacchus and Apollo leads captive with his lay the maiden throng? Though no Tenarian blocks uphold my dwelling, Nor ivory panels shine 'tween gilded beams, No orchards mine Phaeacia's woods excelling, No chiselled grots where Martian water streams. Yet song is mine, my strain the heart engages, Faint from the dance sings the lithe muse with me. O happy maid, whose name adorns my pages, Each lay a lasting monument to thee. The pyramids that cleave heaven's jewelled portal, Elean Jove's star spangled dome, the tomb Where rich Mausolus sleeps, are not immortal, Nor shall escape inevitable doom. Devouring fire and rains will mar their splendor, The weight of years will drag the marble down, Genius alone a name can deathless render, And round the forehead wreathe the unfading crown. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Written on a Flyleaf of Theocritus by Maurice Thompson. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. Written on a Flyleaf of Theocritus. Those were good times in olden days, of which the poet has his dreams, when gods beset the woodland ways and lay in wait by all the streams. One could be sure of something then, severely simple, simply grand, or keenly, subtly sweet, as when Venus and love went hand in hand. Now I would give, such is my need, all the world's store of rhythm and rhyme, to see Pan fluting on a reed, and with his goat hoof keeping time. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Books from the Calendar of Shepherdess, 1528, by Anonymous. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. Books from the Calendar of Shepherdess, 1528. He that many bookes read is, cunninge shall he be. Wisdome is soone caught. In many laves it is sought, but sloth that no booke bought, for reason taketh no thought. His thrifte cometh behinde. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Scholar, from Edwin the Fair, by Sir Henry Tyler. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Canada. The Scholar, from Edwin the Fair. This life, and all that it contains, to him is but a tissue of illuminous dreams filled with book wisdom, pictured thought, and love that on its own creations spends itself. All things he understands, and nothing does. Profusely eloquent in copious praise of action, he will talk to you as one whose wisdom lay in dealings and transactions. Yet so much action as might tie his shoe cannot his will command. Himself alone by his own wisdom not a jot the gainer. Of silence and the 100,000 things 'tis better not to mention, he will speak, and still most wisely. Sir Henry Taylor. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Bookstore by Clinton Scollard. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Leanne Yao. The Bookstore. It stands in a winding street, a quiet and restful nook, apart from the endless beat of the noisy heart of trade. There's never a spot more cool, of a hot midsummer day, by the brink of a forest pool, or the bank of a crystal brook, in the maple's breezy shade, than the bookstore old and grey. Here are precious gems of thought that were quarried long ago, some in vellum bound and wrought with letters and lines of gold. Here are curious rows of calf, and perchance an elzevir. Here are countless mows of chaff and parchment folio, like leaves that are cracked with cold, all puckered and brown and sere. In every age and clime live the monarchs of the brain, and the lords of prose and rhyme. Years after the long last sleep has come to the kings of earth, and their names have passed away, rule on through death and birth. And the thrones of their domain are found where the shades are deep, in the bookstore, old and grey. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Books by John Higgins, from The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Leanne Yao. Books. For why, who writes such histories as these, doth often bring the reader's heart such ease, as when they sit and see what he doth note, well fare his heart, say they, this book that wrote. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Influence of Music, from King Henry VIII, Act 3, Scene 1, by Shakespeare. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Leanne Yao. Influence of Music. Orpheus, with his lute, made trees, and the mountain tops that freeze, bow themselves when he did sing. To his music plants and flowers, ever sprung as sun and showers, there had made a lasting spring. Everything that heard him play, even the billows of the sea, hung their heads and then lay by. In sweet music is such art, killing care and grief of heart, fall asleep, or, hearing, die. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Music from The Merchant of Venice, Act 5, Scene 1, by William Shakespeare. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia as the narrator,
Jason in Canada as Lorenzo,
and Leanne Yao as Jessica.
Music from The Merchant of Venice, Act 5, Scene 1.
How sweet the moonlight sleeps upon this bank! Here will we sit and let the sounds of music creep in our ears. Soft stillness and the night become the touches of sweet harmony. Sit, Jessica. Look, how the floor of heaven is thick inlaid with patines of bright gold. There's not the smallest orb which thou behold'st, but in his motion like an angel sings, still quiring to the young-eyed cherubims. Such harmony is in immortal souls, but whilst this muddy vesture of decay doth grossly close it in, we cannot hear it.
I am never merry when I hear sweet music.
The reason is your spirits are attentive. Therefore the poet did feign that Orpheus drew lives, stones, and floods, since naught so stockish, hard, and full of rage, but music for the time doth change his nature. That man that hath no music in himself, nor is not moved with concord of sweet sounds, is fit for treasons, stratagems, and spoils. The motions of his spirit are dull as night, and his affections dark as Erebus. Let no such man be trusted.
End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Two, by Percy Bysshe Shelley. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Leanne Yao. 2. Music, when soft voices die, vibrates in the memory. Odours, when sweet violets sicken, live within the sense they quicken. Rose leaves, when the rose is dead, are heaped for the beloved's bed. And so thy thoughts, when thou art gone, love itself shall slumber on. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Cello by Richard Watson Gilder, from The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 2. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin as the narrator,
And Lian Yao as the cello.
The Cello. When late I heard the trembling cello play, in every face I read sad memories, that from dark secret chambers where they lay rose and looked forth from melancholy eyes. So every mournful thought found there a tone to match despondence. Sorrow knew its mate, ill fortune sighed, and mute despair made moan. And one deep chord gave answer,
Late, too late.
then ceased the quivering strain, and swift returned into its depths the secret of each heart. Each face took on its mask where lately burned a spirit charmed to sight by music's art. But unto one who caught that inner flame, no face of all can ever seem the same. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.